grandmother was raised over here. My grandmother, and comes from the Green family. Gigiasige, the Gigiasige family. And got plenty of relations that still live here in the village of Killarney, and who are also members of either Wiky or Wanapate, or Henry Inlet, or Sagamuk, where I guess that's just characteristic of that we're all family. So, in welcoming you to this session, I want to thank the Lands Department for putting this session together as a good way of bringing the people together to discuss our history of these lands, and the work that's being undertaken in our community on behalf of all of our members, and the work that we're doing in this territory here also in reclaiming a lot of our land through the different claims processes that are available to us through the governments of Canada and Ontario. Wiky is a signatory to the 1836 treaty, and no other treaty since then. My good friend here, Alan Corbier, is going to go into a little bit more detail in regards to the wampum belts that sit here. And I do, in regards to the 1836 treaty, the very first line of that treaty makes reference to these belts and a lot of the promises that were made to our people in 1764 by Sir William Johnson. And the first words of that treaty were, "It's been 70 snow seasons since we gathered at the Crooked Place," which is in reference to the Niagara Falls, where that gathering took place between the 24 nations and the British Crown. And it's from that principle that an agreement was signed in Manitowoc in August of 1836, a gathering where some of the Crown's obligations and their promises from 1764, where they had pledged to the Anishinaabe peoples that resided in these territories annual presents. And it was at that time when they gathered in Manitowoc that the Governor General decided to make an agreement to confirm that the islands from Penetagwasheen to Baltic and Manitoulin and all the rest of the islands in between would forever remain the territory of the Anishinaabe peoples, which is the primary reason why our community of Wiky continue to refer to ourselves as unceded territory. We're upholding the agreements of the Crown that this territory would forever remain Anishinaabe territory. It's been we've been more active in that area since about 1975, when our council made very specific declarations over its jurisdiction and ownership of islands around what we now know as Wiky and the peninsula, and they referred back the claim subsequently in subsequent years to the 41 Islands claim. We know now that it's much more than 41 islands, because at that time they were referencing the larger islands. In our technical work that we've been doing over the last number of years, the number of islands that actually are part of that land reclamation is more in the neighborhood of about 600 islands. So it's a vast territory that we're continuing to reclaim back as Anishinaabe territory, and get the interference of the governments out of the way of our jurisdiction of controlling this territory, as well as and everything else that would come with those jurisdiction and the responsibilities that come with that. So we've been I'm very happy to be here to welcome you all to a little bit of the presentations that we have here from our various departments that do a lot of the work in our community. And I know there's going to be a good celebration today, some good food, some good dancing, some nice singing. We did, a number of people came across on the boat, so it's good for them to refocus and get coming across on the boat this morning. It's a good time to think about this land and our attachment to the land and the waters. So a number of activities have been going on, and I know that today's not going to be we're not going to have enough time to go in detail in regards to a full update on some of the major activities that have been occurring on the regards to the islands claim. Just want to give you a brief introduction in that area and let you know that as we proceed further in those discussions with the governments, that we'll definitely be having future consultation sessions here and in other areas. So with that, I would like to say very much to the organizers, Stitch and all the staff of the Lands Department, and all the staff that have come to make their presentations today. And I welcome all of you for being here today to listen in on some of the presentations, and I'll fill in where required as we go, and I'll be able to answer more detailed questions as they arise. So with that, I do want to say Miigwech for coming out and enjoy listening to the presentations. Miigwech.
Our next presenter will be someone that's going to hold some really good information for people that may want to know about teachings on the wampum belts. When we first got started here in Lands, we were very foreign to what was really going on. As myself personally as an Anishinaabe, but I learned the process, and I continue to learn about wampum belts. I learn about the treaties, and I expect our staff to continue to learn about the teachings and to take the opportunity to go out and take every opportunity to go and learn and continue to learn about all those teachings. So with that being said, I'll pass it back over to my good friend from Chiging, who was walking around downtown Killarney.
Nin so jik benendo dem Chiging don jaba Miigwech and dam dash Wiky jiu no goa ma pi we bijaya we the badama me gets picked an. So myself, I'm grateful to be invited here to come and talk about these belts, and to talk about them in an hour. You'll have to cut me off when we try not to make it sound like I know a lot about them, because there's a lot more to know. So on the one hand, people say I know a lot about these things, and in a relative term, yeah, I do. But when you think of it in a bigger picture, I don't know a lot about them. So it's the same thing when I was, I'd go and try and listen to this old man and help this old man with what he was trying to teach us. And then I would think, oh, I know this part now. And then he'd open up another part and talk some more. And then I realized I didn't know really too much, as much as I thought I knew. So that's the same thing with these. You can keep looking at them, reading about them, talking about them, hearing other people talk about them. Then you learn a bit more each time somebody else puts a different, their understanding to it as well. So all this that I've learned about it doesn't just come from what I know and what I've read, but I've also been able to listen to Giyo Bizindwakundak Nadawek Ejnikazajic. I went to go listen to who we call Nadawek, and that means Haudenosaunee people. So there's one of the stories we have is that Godingian Vejik Nishnave Gida Jigabik Jigazalgigani. There was a Nishnave who lived by the lake. And when he was living by this lake, he was living with his wife and kids. And then Vejik Mava Nyaga Nishnave Vidasma set. So they saw that this one Nishnave started to come walking towards them. And in one version of this, he looks at him, the wife looks at him and he says, that man is a giant is coming to see us. And then, so the man is all scared. They're wondering what's this giant coming to do, come and talk to him and his family, because they're the only ones that live there. And as that man came closer and closer, he shrunk. So when he was far off, he was tall as a tree. And then as he got closer and closer, then he became same size as a regular man. He came right up to them and he's carrying a bundle on his back. He's carrying a backpack. And when he comes right up close, then that's what he says, Nadamo Shin, says to that Nishnave, Nadamo Shin, help me. He says, I've been told you're the one that's going to be able to help me. And that Nishnave says, Daimamda. I gotta watch my kids here. We're still getting ready for winter and all this. I don't know what you do. How am I supposed to help you? And he says, Gi go dash. I was told that you're a very fast man. Gji kapto wa nene gi kada dido. He says, I was visited and this one told me that you're going to see somebody who runs very fast. He says, well, maybe I can help you out that way, but I don't know. He says, well, sit down anyway. So they fed him, he ate, he sat down and then he says to his wife, Kisne Ken, make some magazines for us. So she made some magazines for them. Didn't take her too long. She made 2 sets each. And he says, where are we going? Then the stranger says to him, Gied non the Kea Chawasa Kajame. We're gonna go way up north, he says. And then he says, Epingishmak na Kea. Then we're gonna go in the west as well. So for very far away, we're gonna go very far time. So they went and they left, they went north for a while, then they went west. And as they got to the west, for many days, Madasogun, Ganabach, maybe 10 days, maybe 20 days they were gone. And then they were canoeing, and then they also had to, of course, portage. So they went further and further, and then they got on the Chimshkude, a big prairie. They got to a big prairie, they met up with a great prairie. Meanwhile, Chit Sining, what they call Sini Ching. In our language, we say Sini Ching, rocky mountains. But now we don't really say that with you for a mountain. But that's an older word we used to say for a mountain, with you. Sini Ching, rocky mountains, this guy that you went to. And he says, you see that one over there? That's the one we're going to. And he looks over there and there's a big white mountain. Okay, says, I see it, and it's across a lake. And he says, so that's a mountain we're gonna go see. Guy with you, always a no. It isn't a mountain. He says, you'll see when we get there. He says, but get your bundle ready. He says, he brought his bundle. He says, get your bundle ready, because when we get over there, you're gonna have to call upon your help. Okay, he says, I'll get ready. So meanwhile, they started paddling towards that. And as they got closer to that, he saw that big white mountain go up and down, up and down. And he started wondering what that was. And he thought, you know, like when it's a highway, when it's hot, you see that shimmering. And he said, maybe that's what that is. It's a guy go up jig this no. He says, but it's not very hot. And he says, well, what is that? Finally he asked him. Somebody call me? Did you hear that too? And then that he says to him, Maba kwa biskoan nabkwagana. He's wearing a necklace, this one. And on that necklace, there's a bag around it. And he says, inside that bag, inside that bag is a great medicine. And it's going to be able to cure all kinds of ills, he says. So, that bear, this is how he wears that. And they'd have this bag like that. So then after a while we put it this way. And they call it skippedagen, or skippedagen, or skippedagen. That's what they wear. But the old time, we didn't have any pockets. So that's what we would wear them like this. So you could grab whatever. So that bear, he's got his paws. He's got his paws right in the water and his mouth right close to the shore. And he's sleeping. And that's why he goes up and down, up and down. He's breathing. So that that Myaga Nishnave says to Nishnave, you're going to go up to him and you're the one who's going to take that off of him. But don't wake him up. Don't wake up that bear. Otherwise we're gonna get killed. So when they walk, they come closer again, and then they see they go to the shore for a bit. And then when they go on the shore, kanan, nibna kanan teno, all kinds of bones. They see all these bones along the shore. And so he asks his friend there, what are all these bones? He says, well, that's all the people that tried to get this before us. That's all their bones. That's the unsuccessful there. But we're not going to be there, he says. Okay, he says, well, now he's scared. He says, this is, we might not make it back. So he goes up to that bear. They go paddling up silently as close as they can. And then they get closer to another part of the shore. And again, he walks along the shore. And then he waits there. And the other Nishnave tells him, once you get that, then you just haul ass back here. And we'll jump in the canoe and we'll take off as fast as we can. So, of course, just like when Duke was digging in his dad's pocket when his dad was sleeping for change, then he goes, that bear. And he lifts that just a little bit, that bear. So that Nishnave stops, doesn't want to wake him up. And again, slowly lifts it, and then that bear's paw goes on it. Of course, that bear, he's scared again now. He's like, oh, well, now I gotta lift his paw. So he was able to lift it just enough and squeeze it out, that part that was under. Now he's got another chance. He's waiting and he's just holding his breath. He finally lifts it over his ear and then tugs at his ear, and then the bear shakes his head. Finally he pulls that off. And he's got that and the bag. So he runs right away, he runs to that canoe, throws it in the canoe, they take off. They start paddling and paddling as fast as they can. And then they're getting way over on the other side of the lake, and they look back, they see that bear. And they keep paddling and paddling. Then all of a sudden they hear this big roar. And they go, oh, he says, get in, each can get in. So they start paddling even harder. And then they just feel, all of a sudden they feel a current. A current just starts, that bear just let out a big roar. And then what he did, he put his mouth in the water, and he just started sucking all the water in. And when he sucked all that water in, that bear started to grow. And as that bear started to grow, all that water is going in him. And those guys are paddling and paddling, and they can't get away from him. That the current's too strong, and it's pulling them, and they're paddling and paddling, but that current's just pulling them back, pulling them back. And they're like, uh-oh, we're going to get it now. So that the stranger says to the Anishinaabe, okay. He says, keep paddling, keep paddling. He says, hide me though. He's in the front and the Anishinaabe is in the back paddling. He says, I'm going to unravel my bag here. And what was sticking out of that bag was a bit of a stick. So he always wondered what was in there. And then when he unraveled that bag, he opened up that bag, and then he saw it was Bugamagan. We call that Bugamagan, a war club. So that war club was in there. Squabic, it's a copper one. It's made of copper, this war club. So he says, okay, you don't have to paddle so hard. What we're going to do is we're going to let this bear draw us in. And then we're going to turn around, and I'm going to knock him right on the head. He says, and then we're going to be able to get going. So that's it. He says, that's your plan? Yeah, that's the plan. So sure enough, he keeps paddling, and they get drawn right into where that bear is. That canoe comes, and they come right up to his nose. And then that canoe they were able to turn that canoe around. The Anishinaabe turns the canoe around. This guy has his that copper war club, hits that bear on the head, but he stuns him. He stuns the bear. He has to hit him again, stuns the bear again. Finally, the third time, that bear lets go all that water. All that water goes, and then these Anishinaabe are propelled all the way back across the lake. And they still have the bag, and that, he says, what they call migas pikkan. So we have this migas pikkan and their club, and they just start paddling away again. They've knocked that bear out. Then they finally made it to the other end of the lake. To get to the river, they start paddling to the next one. Then of course they have to portage, and then they're able to get all the way away enough from that bear. They hear that bear roaring and stomping on the ground, but they're able to escape. These ones, they're able to flee. So they finally get back home, and then that's what they get back to where that Anishinaabe is, and they see his wife and stuff, his kids, and they bring that bag out, and that migas pikkan, what we now call a wampum belt. But pikkan, that's a strap or a harness, but back then they call it a tump line. Migas is a wampum, what we call wampum. Migas pikkan, a wampum tump line. That's what they call that. So it's misnamed in English to call it a wampum belt, because you don't wear it. A guy it doesn't hold up your pants, or hold in your gut. It's not a girdle. This one, you use it as a tump line. So what that stranger did, he opened up that bag, he put all that medicine on the table, and he said, "There's your half, here's my half." Then they took that belt, And he said, this one's yours, this one's mine. So he split that boat in half. And then he says to him, Beanish, Eshqua a king, Eshqua a key one, as long as the end of the earth, Kadiko Nadwe, Ninsa Odawa. He says, now until the end of the world, you will be called Nadwe, and I will be called Odawa. And they say that's how we ended up getting this wampum belt introduced to us. It was because that Nadwe, who was the stranger in the story, he's the one that came to visit us. And then he asked that Odawa to go west, north and west, to go meet that big bear and to steal that medicine that was in the bag. But then in the process of doing that, they actually ended up getting as well the wampum belt. And so when we tell these stories, there's different, it's kind of like looking at the symbols that are in there. So when you look at who's the one that is keeping it, and who the one is actually introducing it, then you look at it in a historical sense. When the Nodawek, the Haudenosaunee, they took over the Hurons, and they dispersed all the Hurons out of Huronia by Georgian Bay area. Some of those Hurons sought shelter with us, and they lived with us at Michilimackinac, and then we went west to what they call Chicoimacong, now it's called La Pointe, Wisconsin, and then even went as far west as Mississippi. And then we came back with them, and when we came back, we lived for a time. The Odawa and the Ojibwe and Potawatomi lived with the Huron on Green Bay for a little while, and then they moved down to Detroit. So when these Huron lived with us, we called them Aninkadoka Nda Nadaway Sim, our little Mohawks, or our little Hurons, Haudenosaunee. So this is a belt that is currently kept at the Pitt River Museum in Oxford, England. And this is a replica made by my buddy Brian Charles from Georgina Island. But when this anthropologist by the name of Horatio Hale collected these belts from the Wendat, he actually wrote down that this belt would have been given by the Huron to another Huron group. But there are 4 Huron groups: the people of the rock, the people of the bog, the people of the bear, and the people of the cord. So there's 4 of them already. So what he thinks it was, he thinks that this belt was actually given by 3 of them to join the 4th. But what I actually think, and I could be wrong on this, don't take this as the gospel, but I think is that these guys actually were given this belt by the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, and that they said, you have a free passage through our country. So this white line means the road of peace. And then when there's a triangle means that nation. So you could look at this as being the Ojibwe, the Potawatomi, and the Odawa. And they gave this belt to the Huron, saying, you have free passage through all of our country, and you're friends with all of us. So that road of peace goes through each of our territories, and that's how they made an alliance with the Anishinaabe, those Huron, they call them Wendat. So then in 1701, they gave a belt, and you see there's 4 squares, and then these ones that are purple on either side, they look like a Lego set, but they said that's a French town. And this was given at Detroit. And he said here, this whole white background means peace. And these purple squares, that means the Huron village, Ojibwe village, Odawa village, Potawatomi village. And they said that each of these 4 groups, these 4 nations, in these 4 villages, were able to hunt in each other's territory, and that they all to live together along the Detroit River. So that's what this belt means. And the original of this belt is also at the Pitt River Museum in London, England. Oxford, England, sorry. And the same guy, Horatio Hale, collected that, and he's the one who wrote that these are the French towns and these are the 4 villages. So these symbols that are used on these belts, a square will represent a village, a diamond represents a nation, and of course a white road represents the white road of peace that we all try to strive for. So you see how Stitch is holding that belt, and whenever you look at a historic painting, just hold that by one hand. That's how you'll see all these historic paintings where the chiefs will talk about them, and they'll look at it this way, vertically, how we talk about them. And then when you look at this one, hold that one, Stitch. And this is what the Jagannash did. They combined the 2 systems. So they made 1764, so now you have to read this left to right, how you read text in English, how you read the alphabet. But the way the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, they used to read it this way. And you see they'd always point, and then they read their belt going down. So these symbols are, this was before, these older belts are before this belt here, the 1764 belt. So generally, but not, this isn't always the case, but usually purple means war or ill feelings, and white means peace. So here, this you would have heard of this already, called the dish with one spoon. And the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee had fought many battles and were fighting each other and killing each other. And there's a lot more bigger stories that go with that. But there was battles on Manitoulin Island and Sagamuk and elsewhere, Nipissing, and all the way out to Sault Ste. Marie and even further. But here, the Haudenosaunee ended up giving us this belt that they call the dish with one spoon. And so if any of you have gone to our ceremonies, you'll see what we still do, in a sense, is when we make a spirit plate, we want to feed those Kimishom Sabananik, we want to feed our ancestors, then everyone in here, if we're doing that, we all take a little bit of our food from our plate and we put it in one dish. And then we either, depending on what feast you're doing, you either put it outside in the bush or you burn it. So that's the same thing with this. This is a dish with one spoon. So what they had said, the Haudenosaunee had said at that time, we give you this dish to the Anishinaabe, and they say in that the dish is the purple part, but inside those white parts, he says that's the ladle, kwan, meanwhile a mik ozo. There's a beaver tail in there. So he said to us, the Haudenosaunee said to us, Anishinaabe, we know you Anishinaabe really like beaver tail. Usually I tell some kind of dirty joke at this point, but I won't. Just because of Stitch. So the Haudenosaunee knew that of the Anishinaabe people, so these guys can make your own jokes. But then they said the other thing that they had said at that time, we don't allow any sharp objects by here or knives in case anybody cuts themselves. Because if they cut themselves and blood is shed, then there's consequences, they said, that will have to be taken. So that was what they said. And why this is all white, it all represents the land. And in the purple part, they put the white in there, the Mkwan and that the Mikozo, the beaver tail. And they said the Anishinaabe, that used to be a Anishinaabe delicacy. Wiky and meat scene, myself anyway. I've never eaten beaver tail myself. Maybe Stitch has, I guess. Smiling ear to ear. Messed up. So they gave us this belt, and they said the land is the dish. The land is the dish. So now what we call this, our lawyers and everybody else come up with a term, Intertribal Treaty Harvesting Accord. But back then we called this the dish with one spoon. And they said that anybody could go on the territory to harvest food for their wives and children and grandchildren. But they weren't to go there and take everything over and to sell it. That wasn't the intent of this. This was that everybody, all the earth was our life, our sustenance, and that we all had a right to that. That's what this belt means. So then this one, there was another belt they had given us. So this is before 1701. This belt is dated to 1701. And this one, it looks like they gave us this before then as well, because there was a great peace in Montreal, and they had thousands of Anishinaabe all over the Great Lakes, Cree, Sioux, Winnebago, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sauk and Fox, and Six Nations, and Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Odawa, Bodwe, Adami, all went to Montreal, and they had this big treaty. But before that, again, the Haudenosaunee, they gave us this for peace. They wanted us to stop fighting them, to stop killing them, because we were winning. They were the ones who cleared us out at first, out of what we call Ontario. But then the Anishinaabe fought back. They gathered their forces, and then we had significant battles that we won. And we say we pushed them right south of the Great Lakes. That's why they're back down in the south of the Great Lakes. And that's how come we have now people called Mississaugas of New Credit, Mississaugas of Credit, and all that area. And that's why those Nodawik now, they're fighting for that, what they call Haldeman tract. Because that Haldeman had to make a treaty with the Anishinaabe to get that land, to give that to the loyalists, what some call loyalist Six Nations after the American Revolution. So they gave us this belt as well. And they said on this belt, they said there's a white road of peace through all the territory. And they said at this first image there, we don't know exactly how this belt looks. This is our best educated estimate of what this belt would look like. So I had Ken Miracle make this, but I came up with the design. So they said at the Sault Ste. Marie, this is where this council was held. And they said there's no image there. The next symbol on there represents the council fire at Manitoulin Island. They said Nido Minis. And they said our grandfathers ki sana ne tikmeg one anin kadok tikmeg one anin kadok wapshke gigo. So they say then, because the English becomes problematic, because they say at Manitoulin Island, the council fire, they placed there a white fish. So some people think it's tikmek, the white fish, but what I think they're actually saying is a white colored fish, and because then they say that represents bin de win, clean-heartedness, pure-heartedness, and purity. That's what they say it represents. Then they said the next symbol thereon, they said our ancestors met and they put at the council fire in an island on Penetanguishene Bay, a mick. They put a beaver there, and that beaver represents that superiority and wisdom. No, it represents wisdom. They said Wakawente on that island. So they made that beaver. They put that beaver on that island there, and then they said the next symbol that's there. They said over at Minjikaning, at the Narrows, where at Aurelia by Casinorama. They said they put this belt there and they placed there, and it says again, a white deer. So some think Waashkesh, but what I think it is, and my friend who I learned this from, Darlene Johnson, says that it's actually Wapshke Edik. Wapshkizit Edik. Edik is a caribou. And so they placed there a white caribou. And that white caribou is the one to keep care. They said, he's the one who gets keep charge of our dish with one spoon and this belt. So they kept the two there. They said they're the ones that are charged with keeping that. Then they said the last symbol thereon, they said there is a tall tree Bedukshing Jiguak Zagdang Ode Credit River. So at the Credit River there's a tall pine tree. And they said our ancestors put on top of that tall pine tree Migaze. And he said this Migaze represents watchfulness, alertness, as well as swiftness. So they said if any danger is coming, this eagle perched on the tall pine tree will see wherever it's coming from. And then if he detects that, then he is to fly up and tell that Wapshkazit Adik Meanwhile, Mick, meanwhile, Wapshkizit Gigon, meanwhile, the people at Baoting, who now we know would be Jijak, Jijakuk, the cranes. So the way they ended up putting this, why we said a diamond instead of a hexagon. A hexagon usually represents a council fire on these belts, and a diamond represents the people. So Ken was saying, I would put a diamond on there because I wanted him to put a council fire and put on a hexagon on this belt. So anyway, I said, well, okay, it was the Haudenosaunee that gave us this, and if you think that it was diamonds, then we'll do that. So that's why we put that on there. And then they said the last thing they put on there in the middle of the belt was a moon of wampum that our ancestors tied there. And they said this moon of wampum represents Jesus, the sun. And that sun looked over all of what our ancestors had done and agreed to, and that's why it'll be inviolable. And that it'll last forever. As long as the sun crosses the sky, this agreement is going to be in place. So it sounds like a nice story that they put a fish there, a beaver there, and a caribou and an eagle. But actually, when you look at this and you map it out on a map, and you look at the treaties of different areas, and you see the main chiefs, they're actually the Nodawik are saying, okay, we know we had a war and we tried to take your land, but now with this belt we're saying we recognize you, Jijakok, that you are the principal chiefs and the principal proprietors around Baoting, around Sault Ste. Marie. And you of a fish clan, you are the principal proprietors and the principal chiefs at Nidominis. And you of the Mick beaver clan are the principal chiefs and the principal proprietors around Penetanguishene Bay. And you of a Dik Koko de Minjikaning, the caribou of the Minjikaning of the fence, the fish weir, you are the principal chiefs and the principal owners, proprietors at that area. And then you of the Eagle clan are the principal proprietors and chiefs at the Credit River, or what we now call Toronto. So if you go on the website of the Credit River Toronto claim, and you look at their treaty, and you'll see all these eagles on their treaty. Same thing, you go to, you look at that 1836 treaty that Duke talked about, and you'll see that the chief there at French River at that time was named Wegimake, and he signs with a beaver. And then the same thing, you go to Sault Ste. Marie, and you'll see that the chief there, the principal chief is usually a Crane chief, Crane clan chief. And then around Manitoulin, they don't say which fish. So it could be Ginoje, Malge, Neme, Malge, Wasi. So they just say a white fish, but usually we don't have too many white fish as a totem, but there was. But the main ones around Manitoulin at the time, like I know for sure the Ishkakagan clan was Ginoje, and then Kinoshme clan was Wasi, that's a brown bullhead, that's small catfish. And then Neme clan was also around. But Franklin Pavomse, Chief Shining Turtle, says that Shawanaswa's clan was Neme, but on the treaty actually it said, somebody wrote down beside it, Pike. So that's what, these are what we would call the antecedents of this belt here. So when you look at this belt, then you put some of these together, then you can kind of see a resemblance what these guys were doing. Because the guy who made this, he had a Mohawk wife who was a clan mother. And you see their symbol that they use, if you look at, you notice all these belts that I've talked about so far, we just use geometric shapes. So we didn't actually put on here, we didn't weave a beaver on here. And we didn't put a white fish on here. We used the symbols as a mnemonic device to talk about that, and it represented that, and we had to learn to memorize the speech that went with it. That was how our system worked. So then they ended up using their numbers, and then they introduced men. So one, Bejaganishnabe, meanwhile, Jagnash. Sgin Kendok. They're holding each other's hands. But put those ends together, Stitch. Yeah. But, like a circle, like you're wearing it like a belt. Yeah. Like you're the champ. Then tuck those, like it's like doing up your zipper. Tuck all those fringes in. Yeah, tuck all those, yeah. Yeah. Chum sedeo. So you see there, they combine the symbols in this one belt. The two men on the other side, so turn around, Stitch. You see there's two men holding hands. Jaganash, meanwhile, Nishnabe. They're holding hands closely tied together in alliance. Meanwhile, Bimskukabawin. Then you see here, those two complete each other, that two diamonds are together in close alliance. And a diamond represents a nation. So that's how they represented this. The British ended up manipulating our symbols and using it to make a melding of two traditions in this one belt. And I think they were actually pretty successful in being able to merge it into a perfect document that we would call a document. They don't acknowledge this as a document. When Pat Madabi took this belt to England, he wanted to, when they were repatriating the Constitution, he wanted them to recognize this belt. And then the Canadian government was on record at that time saying this isn't a treaty. And if it's a treaty, where's the signed document? Where's the dodems? Where's the paper? But all from 1764 all the way up to the War of 1812, they referred to this as a treaty. Then after that, that's when, after 1836, then they started saying, oh, there's a custom that they have that goes with this. So they diminished it from a legal treaty down to saying, oh, it's just a custom and an heirloom. So they were diminishing the actual document. Oh, his pants fell down. Knee wedge stitch. So you see, when you hold it like this, then that's how we would have originally held this. But of course, you can't have the men like that. But then you look at this. Here you could see that this actually does represent a road here. And we call it a strong cord of friendship. So what the Nodawik had done before, they made an alliance with the Dutch on the Hudson River. And then they called it at that time, we're going to tie our hands together in friendship. And they used the rope. And they said, our friendship is stronger than rope. So they said, we made an iron chain of friendship. And then that's when they started using this chain links. But when they actually did that, if you hold it sideways, the earlier covenant chain belts just had a Nishnabe on this end, and at that end they had the Jagnash, and they had a white line or the purple line going connecting them. So they didn't actually make chain links, they just made a straight line saying this is what binds us together, this iron chain. And then after a while they said, iron is strong, but anybody can make it. And iron rusts easily. And they said, it's not very valuable. We actually value our friendship more. So we're going to make a silver covenant chain. That's what they said at that time. And this silver covenant chain, they said, we know that silver will tarnish if you don't take care of it. So they said, we pledge that every year we're going to get together and polish the chain and keep it free from rust. And when they're talking about keeping it free from rust, they actually mean as well in a allegorical sense or metaphorical sense, that if anybody, they said the chain is rusty, that means somebody was killed and that blood was put on that. So they said, we got to get together and polish the chain. So when they gave us this belt, of course, as some of you know, it was Pontiac, Odawa chief Pontiac, but then there was also a Seneca chief by the name of Gayasota, who was instrumental in fighting the British at that time, because the British wanted to just come and take over. They defeated the French, and they thought that they had defeated us. And they thought that when they took over from the French, that they were able to then take all the land that they thought the French owned. But it was our ancestors that said, no, you defeated the French, but you didn't defeat us. And even the French, they never bought 1 foot of land off us. They only asked permission to set up these posts, at Detroit, at Michilimackinac, at Fort Augustus, and other places. They only asked us for the posts. And they said, all throughout that time, they were giving us presents to do that. They would give us presents all that time so that they could live on our land. And he said, so here, that was what the French had said. And then when General Amherst took over in 1760, he said, we're not going to give presents. Why would we reward people who have been going against us? Why would we give ammunition to our enemies? And why would we reward bad behavior? So of course they always talked to us as children. But then once they ended up ending Pontiac's War in 1763, 1764 they had this Treaty of Niagara, and that's when they gave this belt and the other belt. And they had said at that time to us, and our ancestors had written this down in Ojibwe, and they said, "Gyawage o kiwawin dan." There was one more thing that you had promised. Manda nap kwan kaminen. I give you this ship. It'll always be full. Anything and everything that you need for your livelihood will be in that boat. If you see anything lacking, they said, just shake the strong cord of friendship, and then I'll know that there's something missing. He says, my children are missing something. And he says, Gobos Jimaning, I'll get in that boat. Bandawam Danwe, Queen Wabindemek, and I'll look at whatever is missing in that boat, Gobos Tondash, and I'll put it in there, I'll load it in there. Then he says, Kina Nishnabek Dash Wikabidok Gajimanoa. Then all of you Nishnabek get together and you pull that boat, pull that into the shore. And he says, and then you'll see that I have fulfilled part of my promises to you. So they always said to us, this will always be full. And they used to have in there wawanan, babagoyanan, minwa dash nido wagon, different cloth, Irish linen, strouds, stuff like that. And they even used to give us fish hooks. They'd give us fish hooks, even sup, they'd give us nets, and twine to make nets. And even in Toronto at one time, they had their blacksmith make a bit of a cradle for what they call a waswagon, our torches, when they'd go spearfishing at night. So they had their blacksmith make a pole, and it had a cradle to keep the pine pitch in there and the pine knot, so that when they went out in their canoes, and they would see the eyes of those fish. So they used to give us that, and they'd give us even what they call Russia or Scotch sheeting. And that's what this, now we call that Gosmonigan. They give us canvas for our wigwaman, meanwhile our sails. We put sails on our boats too, our canoes, or as they say, kano. So we'd have that, that's what they'd have in there. That's why we say this belt here represents more than just alliance. People talk about this belt as alliance, that it's friendship. It is that, but this actually represents our hunting and fishing rights as well. Because every year, they actually gave us the means, and when they're giving us the means, they're telling us, we acknowledge that you are the one who are able to go and hunt and fish all over this land. Because they gave us the fish hooks, they gave us guns, they gave us ammunition, they gave us powder and shot and ball for that. And they gave us even sails for that. They even gave us different kinds of line. They call it cod lines, mackerel lines. So they had different what now we call the test of the line. 40-pound test or 10-pound test line. So that's what they would give us, different size of hooks and stuff. So they're giving us the means to do that, and then once they had Confederation and they passed the Game and Fishery Act, then they start confiscating our fish when we set a net. Then they tell us we can't spear fish at night anymore. Then they tell us you can't fish out of season. Meanwhile, we were always saying, no, you don't have that over us. You're the one who actually agreed to this, and it's in this belt that you agreed to that. The other thing that they said when they gave us this belt at that time, they said, when you look all around the heaven, they said, look to the east. They said, when you look to the east, you'll see the sun rising red. The bishko and you'll see that sun is rising red, the same as the color of my coat that I wear. And then you'll think of your father, King George III, and then as well the Queen. And you'll remember that all of these promises are still in effect. And then they said, and as that sun gets a bit higher and the rays start to burn a bit hotter, they said everywhere that the earth touches, that there'll be flowers appearing everywhere. And then this is the refrain of that speech. That is the image of the life of your children. So you're going to see all these flowers all around, and that's what the British promised us. They said your life will never sink into poverty. You will never be poor. If you agree to take this belt and you agree to let us live on your land. That's what they had told us. So then they said, that sun even went higher. They said it was shining very brightly. And then they said again, that is the image of the life of your children. Everything is sun shining. It's high prosperity. Everything is good. That's what they had told us at that time. So then they said too, the other thing they said, in the middle of your island, I stand up a tree. Meanwhile, all around that, I sweep all around that tree. I clean it out. And then I roll out a mat. And he says, and under that mat, we will sit and smoke under that tree. And he says, meanwhile, I put beside that fire a poker, and I light up this fire. And I say to you, your fire will never go out. That's what they promised us at that time as well. And of course, I don't have to go into what fire means for Anishinaabe people. That there's so many different ways you read that. But of course, to us, each of us, we say, Mi Wiky Gijemnado Gijan Nishinaaben. Okay? Sin Nodin Be Minwa Shkode Gin Kazan. That when he made the Anishinaabe, he took those elements and then he made us Anishinaabe people, and then he actually then put fire in us. And each of us, when we're alive, we have that fire in us as well. And so when we feed that fire, that's the thing, we try to keep that fire clean. And they understood that. And every time we gathered to meet here with the British, they actually gave us tobacco. Part of the presents was tobacco each time. So they knew to give us tobacco. So when we had the council, they would actually give us tobacco and they'd give us pipes. And we'd sit around and smoke with each other, and then they'd feed us and we'd have a feast as well. So when they set up that, they said, we set up a council fire. Sir William Johnson came to Detroit in 1761 and he says, I brought a brand with me. The king had told me to light a fire set up a fire in the Mohawks country at my house. And he says it burns off such a warm and pleasing glow, nice warmth and a pleasing glow, that all the Anishinaabe from all around come to enjoy its warmth. And he says, now I've taken a brand from that fire and I come to Detroit and I ignite the fire here on behalf of the king for all of his Western allies to come and enjoy. So that's what I would say this one could represent as well, is that this would represent the council fire at Detroit, and then at Michilimackinac, and in Niagara, and then at his place as well. And then at each of those, you have in there a kind of a symbol that represents that dish with one spoon as well. So the council fire and the dish with one spoon is suggestive of multiple interpretations of what this belt means. So this belt doesn't just mean that we're gonna hold hands together and get along. It actually represents our Aboriginal title as well, because that was one of the first lines that is in that speech. And he says, Mi mandaga kidyan, this is what you had said. Mi mandaga egoyin, kin jaganash. You, the Jaganash, this is what you had told us. You told us that our children will own that land. You told us this at Niagara. And Niagara in Anishinaabe, there's a number of different words that they use, but in this particular speech they say Wayanak. And then of course that's how they translated it as the crooked place, but that at the bottom of a falls there's a big hollow, and that's what that is, Wayanak. That's what they call that there. So they told us at that time, and that's the first line in that speech that they say, you told us that our children will own this land. And so that's what this belt represents, Aboriginal title, but it also represents the Aboriginal right to hunt and fish, because they gave us for many years lines to fish, hooks to fish, nets to fish, guns, ammunition, ball and shot, and they called it warmth. They said, you're going to send us warmth to our country. And that warmth, of course, is the fire, but that warmth is also the blankets, the cloth, the shrouds, the Irish linen, the ratteen, all this other stuff that they gave us that we were then able to use to make leggings, skirts and shirts and other clothing items. Asianan. And that's now we say that's diapers, but that's loincloth, ASEAN. So they gave us all that to clothe ourselves, to feed ourselves, and that's part of the deal. And that's what we're trying to get them to understand, that they should live up to this as well. But all they want and all they know is the paper, and all they want to know is the paper. So they want to just keep referring to that Royal Proclamation, but that's only half of that. That Royal Proclamation, we didn't really sign off on that, but when the Anishinaabe scholar John Burroughs says that's what Sir William Johnson, when he came to Niagara, he says that's what Sir William Johnson came and he brought the Royal Proclamation there and actually read it off at Niagara, and that's what we agreed to at that time. And this is our part of the treaty. So there's me minik wakidyan, that's about all I really wanted to say at this point. Miigwech gibajayek kinechiyek, is in the mic. Thank you all for listening and for coming out and for inviting me to this. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Alan. So a little bit of our appreciation here. We're going to give you a little bit of 10W30. But it's good. So I hope everybody enjoyed his presentations. Yeah, like Alan mentioned, he has, he could probably talk on one belt or one topic here for quite a discussion. So we like to at least we got a little taste of what he knows, and we're grateful for all the information. So Alan. Treat from us. Yeah, these are from the abandoned oil well. We'll be having a discussion on the oil well, so that's pure grade. What do you call it? Black gold, as we say down in the Pamukang. So I guess we're going to be cutting little things pretty fine here for lunch and for the powwow. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask the manager of tourism to come up and maybe discuss his little program here, and we'll get him to talk about what he's doing here in Killarney and in Grundine, I guess, for the community and for the province. So maybe we can give a little bit of undivided attention to Mr. Luke Wasagija.
Alan's a tough act to follow. It's always a pleasure listening to Alan. I mean, I remember in my early years working in Wiky and learning about some of the history of our area and consulting with Alan about some of our history. So again, it's always a pleasure. I think our journey of learning our history really is a journey. So I say miigwech to Alan and Gima for having us here today. What I'm here to talk about today, again, I think Gima touched on a little bit about how our community is continuing to grow, our territory is continuing to expand beyond our geographical boundaries in Wakwamako. I think part of that territory includes Jibonaning in Point Grundine, and then the islands. So our project that we're working on in Point Grundine is a part of that, and it fits all into that. It fits into our management of our territory, beyond our boundaries in Wakwamako. And I think one project that's going to help us and assist us at managing our territory is the park we're planning on opening in Point Grundine. So what we're doing with Point Grundine, we have partnered with the Georgian Bay Coast Trail to develop over 200 kilometers of hiking trail that would take us from Point Grundine into Bayfield Inlet and connect some of the communities that Alan talked about, some of the Amic Nation down in the French River. So we're looking at connecting into Shawanaga, Henby Inlet, and Magnetawatt via hiking trail. So not only is the project in Grundine an eco-tourism initiative and the economic development initiative, it's also about connecting communities, and it's also about a way for our community to manage our territory outside of our boundaries in Wakwamako. So I think it's a good way. This year we're looking at opening the park on July 3rd, which is next Friday. We'll be opening, our first hikers are set to go in on Saturday. So we're opening the park, we're having a grand opening on August 21st. So this year we're opening 21 kilometers of hiking trail with backcountry interior sites. It's a pay-per-use system where people come in, they purchase permits online or they purchase day permits at the site itself. There's partnerships with the Killarney Provincial Park. Right now we have Elijah Manitowabi along with Ian Tritto working inside of Killarney Park where they're being trained in park management. But with Elijah, he's actually our trail guardian, who's actually doing some training with Killarney Provincial Park, but also working inside of our park, managing and being a guardian for the territory. So again, we're looking at Canada Day weekend opening the park, and then having the grand opening on August 21st, where again we'll invite members of the community to come across via boat and then come up to the park for the ribbon cutting. We have crews up there right now. We'd like to take you up right now, but we're still under construction. We're working hard to get it open for next Friday, so we do have crews out there. So again, on August 21st, we'll send out an invite again for all of you to come out and to enjoy the park. So that's pretty much my presentation. Again, I welcome you all here today. It's always good to be back in Jibonaning. I have the opportunity of coming out here often and visiting the land and visiting the islands today. I believe I'm taking Mr. Corbier to see the pictograph sites out in Collins Inlet. But again, we welcome you all here, and if you get a chance, if you're up here after July 3rd, to come up to the park and pay us a visit in there. It's a beautiful place. We're definitely blessed with some beautiful territory out here. So yeah, if you get a chance, come on out and enjoy the park. You can visit us online at grundinepark.com. There's some information here that you can take with you today and learn a little bit more about it. So I say miigwech, thank you and welcome.
That some of you that speak Anishinaabe, I was wondering why they call this, I think it's Flamand, a Wishtonwe. And they say it means blacksmith. But I can't figure out how that a Wishtonwe means a blacksmith. And then those people, of course, were up here at Point Grandin. And the interesting thing was they wrote a petition, I think it was 1852, after the Robinson-Huron Treaty, but it might have been 1851. But the one chief there, Papa says, he gave a otter skin pouch to the Governor General at that time. So I was always kind of looking for where did this otter pouch go that he gave as part of the petition. They talk about that the land they wanted when they signed the treaty, they actually said in that specific petition, we meant leagues, not miles, when we made our reserve. But when the surveyor came here, he used miles, and I forget the exact amount that it's close to 3 times. A league is close to 3 times a mile, like 2.7 or 2.8. So of course, when the surveyor come along and then he really shortened these reserves because he kept using miles instead of leagues. But so they wrote that petition, Papa says, and the other chief there, and he says this is the one that sends along the otter pouch to you. So these otter pouches, of course, I don't know if you've ever seen them. They would put quill work on the paws and on the tails, and they're really a nice thing, and they're actually quite a powerful medicine as well. So I was always kind of wondering what happened to that. And then the other thing is that name, a Wishtonwe, how that end up, why they call that a blacksmith, a Wishtonwe. I don't know how that ends up being called that. The other interesting thing is that Alexander Henry reports that when all these guys are going down to the Treaty of Niagara in 1764, they actually come through here, and then they stop at Point Grandin, and then they met a rattlesnake there at that time, and then so he was going to kill that rattlesnake, this Alexander Henry, and then the Anishinaabe stopped him. They said, "No, don't kill him," and so then they lit up all their pipes, and then they started blowing smoke at that. And they are addressing that rattlesnake as grandfather, and they said they're not usually up this far. It's kind of interesting to say we don't have them up this far. So anyway, they tried to take off the next day from Point Grandin to go down the Niagara, and then the water, the wind changed, and so then they had to turn back, and then that's what they made an offering to the water, and they said, Forgive us, we got the Jaganash with us, and he probably offended you when he was going to kill that rattlesnake. So that's what they attributed their bad luck with the weather to, is that this Jaganash was going to kill that rattlesnake.
Ellen, I would rest your mind on Wishtonwe. That means the one who makes it.
Oh, okay.
Wishtonwe is the one that was making stuff, eh?
Okay, Jito, yeah,
Wishtonwe,
yeah,
the one who makes it.
okay.
On the other one, there was another one. I did take a little bit of Indian too, you know. Wishtonwe, the Ottawa.
Yeah.
It took me years to find out what that means. There were traders in Ottawa, okay?
Yeah.
When the white man comes around, these Anishinaabe send out their people to trade. Ottawa,
Yeah.
Utanding. That's where that came from. Otaid, one cell. Ottawa.
Good. I got one more question. This question's for Luke, I guess, or maybe Stitch knows of this. I got another book, and they're coming up from Toronto. They got all the presents. They're coming to deliver the presents up to Manitoulin, and a soldier kept a journal, and he's writing about this. And they come up through Holland's Landing, and then they make it to Georgian Bay, And then when they get to Georgian Bay, I guess a geek one. It was just really foggy, a dense fog. So they got kind of lost, and then they were kind of landlocked on these islands in Georgian Bay for a while. And then the soldier writes in his journal, he says, then they sent out the Nishnabek to find the spot, they say, where the caribou left his hoof print. So they're looking around on the shores of these islands. There's supposed to be on the shore of this island in the rock a hoof print in the shape of a caribou's hoof print. Have you ever heard of that or seen that or?
I'll take you there today.
Okay. So that's one thing I was trying to. I thought I'd like to find where that is. That must have been a landmark they used. Well, obviously they used it to say, okay, we're here, and then now I know where to go. When it was really foggy and they couldn't see, so that's what they were looking for was that hoof print in the rock on the shore of the caribou. Take me there.
I will take you there. I think, I don't know if we're ready to break for lunch or not. I don't see Stitch anywhere.
And if it is, tell them that you're looking to purchase a cottage lot. Probably somebody will go. How many people are here today? Okay.
What's it for?
This is the will template. Questions about the existing statement. We can give you an update as to where that is. Are you nervous? Property to sell. And you have to be 18 years of age to have a valid will, legal will. And you say, this is my last will and testament of me, so-and-so. I give all my, you can say, one that has to.
And 9.
Oh, you're good.
Beans, fries, and fish.
Okay.
There you go.
Two, check. 1, 2, check. Please. Not to take any pictures during Front entry. I'll be letting you know when it's appropriate. Thank you.
We also showed us, he heard the vibrations. He was crawling around over here beside the dancers. Janet made a little jump. I want to welcome the Sudbury District Catholic School Board, the Killarney School, and their students for coming out and participating. I think it's a great opportunity for them to experience powwow here in their own hometown, and I think it's an opportunity for us to work in the future and possibly have some future events like this for the children, and because that's what it's all about, passing down these stories, our history. I welcome all the visitors here who are stuck to their chairs like me. We'll get you up shortly. We'll have a little spectator dance. I'm sure there'll be a little spot dance for them, right, Roger? Roger said he's going to come and show his moves also. Moves, I didn't say moon. It's good to see everyone here. It's a very nice venue. I do want to thank Mr. Pitfield and the Killarney Bay Inn for hospitality and hosting us here. Mr. Pitfield is also a band member of Wiky, and he's thinks very highly of all the people, and he's very supportive of everything that we do here on the land and on his property here. So thank you, Bill. So with that, pass the mic back to Roger, and please travel safely when you do get home. Jimmy Witch.
Second place, come on down. Anything else you want to say? Oh, she wants to redonate it. Oh my goodness. Drum roll. Stop.
First place, there.
Bring him over. He's going on Dancing with the Stars. Toad Rock. You must be from Ronapatay.
Yes, sir.
Hey, right on. The Rock from Ronapatay.
Ted's my son.
Ted's your son, right on. Ted Rock, chief of... oh, he donates it back. Okay, don't anybody move and.
There you go.
Okay, we got winner.
Speech.
Two winners. Oh, one more to go.
Oh boy, here we go again.
Okay. They wanted to tell.
Awesome. There you go.
Thanks a lot, Todd.
Isn't it shame?
That's it.
Where is Nickelback?
What the?
See how much art she's taking there.
Sorry.
We'll see us
Share the prize.
share the five if he can get us.
Okay, sorry.